My name is Juliana Nicolasian with the Oklahoma State University Library. Today is Monday, December 13th, 2010, and I am in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, interviewing Suzanne Edmondson. This interview is being conducted as part of the inductees of the Oklahoma Women's Hall of Fame Oral History Project. Suzanne was inducted into the Oklahoma Women's Hall of Fame in 2009. Thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm delighted to be here and appreciate the project very much.
Well, let's begin by learning a little bit more about you. Could you tell me where you grew up and give me a little background into your early life?
I grew up in northern Illinois, due west of Chicago, an area called the Quad Cities. It's on the Mississippi River. I was born in Moline, Illinois, and lived for many years in that area. I attended high school in Rock Island, Illinois, and pretty much left the area because family moved away. I have not been back. I recently discovered in some high school contacts, I haven't been back to Illinois since 1974. So I've been gone quite a long time.
Well, when you were growing up, tell me about the schools you attended as a young girl.
Okay. My mother is a Roman Catholic, was a Roman Catholic. Her only brother, a nun, her only brother, a priest. Though my father was an agnostic, we attended parochial schools and went to, we, when I was very young, we had a home in town in a little cabin, a cottage on the lake, on the Mississippi River, rather. And one year, we did not go back to town at the end of the summer. And so going to the good schools in town involved quite a commute and was with questionable weather in the winters in northern Illinois. It was quite an effort on her behalf to have us hitting the road very, very, very early to get to schools in town to Rock Island. So Catholic all the way.
Were they large schools or small?
I am kind of the last of the pre-baby boomers born in 1945. The classes behind me were increasingly large as the as the veterans came home and established their families. So relatively speaking, my schools were very small, but the guys behind me were kind of exponentially increasing.
Well, what sort of activities were you involved with
Well,
growing up?
with a long commute, that kind of precluded a good bit of the after school activities. There were some things that I did in grade school when we lived actually in the little town in East Moline where I went to school. It was Girl Scouts and all the kind of regular things until we drove at age 16. Our attendance at football games and things like that was somewhat problematic because it was about a 45-minute commute, and one did not just jump in the car and run to town and for that. When we were old, well, at least Mother and Dad weren't willing to to drive us that far after we'd already traveled a good bit that day. So when we dated and things, we became more active in what was going on in town.
Mm. That is a long commute.
Yes, it really was. When you consider that at 16 we were driving in very hazardous conditions, often through the winter. Of course, unlike Oklahoma, Illinois is prepared and expects bad weather. So there was a lot of road equipment, plowing and whatnot. But we were right on the Mississippi, and Iowa was in my front yard beyond the Mississippi. Big open area with some very cold winds coming across the frozen river. And I'm very happy to live in the Mid-South, even though today's the coldest day of the year.
Well, as you're going through school, did you gravitate towards any subjects that really piqued your interest?
I have always been attracted to literature, and am quite a reader to this day. And I now facilitate a writing class down at Oklahoma County Jail for the incarcerated women there. So I still have my hand in on writing, and it's a great pleasure. We three who facilitate think that we learn more than our women do, but that's how those things go.
And we'll get to that a little bit more in a second. As you're growing up and you're going through grade school and high school, did you have any ideas of what you wanted to be when you got older?
It was a kind of traditional time. When I graduated high school, John Kennedy was president, and women in the main at that time were nurses or teachers, stay-at-home moms, and that sort of thing. I fully expected to go to college and did, but really not with the notion to do anything astonishing with it. So I am very surprised that the course that my life has taken, and that I'm here because of prison work. That is, I couldn't have imagined that in my wildest dreams.
So you went on to college. Where did you go to college?
Okay, I went to Marycrest College, a small women's college in Davenport, Iowa, and transferred on down the line to University of San Diego College for Women. And I have been pretty much more or less a senior in college since about 1967.
That's a big jump to California.
Yes, it was. I had an uncle there and my grandmother, and it was a lovely opportunity for us that was very interesting. San Diego is a Navy city, of course. Those were Vietnam years when I was there. And my husband was a lieutenant in the Navy that I met in San Diego.
While you were in college?
Mm-hmm.
And how did you meet your husband?
I lived in Mission Beach in a little bitty apartment, but the ocean was right there. I think this is from my old Mississippi River days. I need water right out front. And Jim, my husband, and two other officers from his ship lived in an apartment the same size. I alone and the three of them, but somebody, one of those three, was always on duty and had to stay on the ship. Those were there was always an officer on duty, so it was never all three of them at the same time. But he was my neighbor. I was the girl next door.
And the rest was history.
Yes. We just celebrated, we're about to celebrate our 41st anniversary, so that's some time ago.
Mm-hmm. So what happened after college years?
Well, traditional things, raising children, and I always was involved in community work and was a Girl Scout leader and on the board of the YWCA and this and that, PTA, all those sorts of things. I always felt that we need to give to our community. And I was off and on for 6 years president of Friends of the Library in Muskogee. And I believe that has a good bit to do with why I named my foundation Friends of Eddie Warrior. I think it was just an evolutionary step.
And I know I keep pulling you back.
Yeah.
I keep pulling you back.
I feel like
and I want to jump forward.
Yeah.
But I'm going to keep pulling you back a little
Okay.
bit more.
Okay.
How did you get to Oklahoma?
I met Jim Edmondson, Lieutenant in the Navy, in San Diego in 1969. He was coming out of the Navy at that time. He'd served his on a ship in the South China Sea. It was a helicopter carrier that had a squadron or fleet, whatever, a bunch of Marines. And the Marines were taken ashore for operations in country in Vietnam. The Tripoli, Jim's ship, the helicopter carrier, then became a hospital ship, and at times a morgue, as these people flew back. And Jim was an officer of the deck. He was one of 3 junior officers that drove the ship. And anyway, we met. He had not yet gone to law school. We came to Oklahoma to marry in Muskogee and moved to Washington, D.C., where he started Georgetown Law. And that would have been 1970, the fall of 70 when he did that. So we lived there. It was great fun. My father-in-law was in Congress at that time, and we had kind of a schizophrenic life of poor GI Bill law student family on the one hand with the beanie weenies, and on the other hand, very fancy fundraisers that we would go to, and people like Lyndon Johnson and Hubert Humphrey would be at the next table. So it was, my wardrobe was jeans and very beautiful ball gowns. It was odd and great fun. We enjoyed Washington very much. Our son was born there, and we still have ties to Washington. We have a niece that lives there and her husband. So we all consider Washington kind of part of our ongoing lives.
And then eventually you made it back to Oklahoma?
Yes. Ed, my father-in-law, Ed Edmondson, ran for the U.S. Senate. And Jim and I came back, I think this would have been, 73, 74, along in there, to campaign for him. It was an unsuccessful race. Jim became law partners for a very brief time, with his cousin, James Howard Edmondson. And we thought we would stay in Oklahoma City, but ultimately it was better, it was more feasible for us to move to Muskogee, which we lived from 75 until 2004, 02, 03, 04, yeah. So the bulk of our child raising those years were spent in Muskogee, and I was involved, as I say, in kind of typical do-gooder sorts of things, making the community a better place, a good place.
Muskogee's a great city.
We enjoyed our time there very much. We, of course, sold our home there when Jim came to the Supreme Court, but we still have a cabin over in Cherokee County, the next county over, where we will travel on Christmas Day with our adult children. So we will have kind of an old-fashioned few days in the country coming up very soon.
Well, you mentioned you were involved in various activities
Yes.
in Muskogee, including serving on the Friends of the Library.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's that pattern of literature, literacy,
Hmm.
just still there and growing and building.
I view my life very much as kind of an evolution rather than distinct chapters. I see one thing flowing into another, just very uh, kind of consistently, and the difference from my early campaign works, and of course I'm a mother at the same time and raising children. Uh, I was my emphasis was improving my community. And when I began my prison work, I began to change lives. And there's a substantial difference and the responsibilities are substantially different. So I take my work now very, very seriously when I kind of played around with the other stuff and did lots of good things. I won't diminish that and know so many women who work and take time to serve on boards and do fundraisers and whatnot. It's a big chore and I applaud them. And I feel fortunate that I am able to focus on my volunteer work and I take it very seriously.
Well, could you tell me how working in the correctional institutions came about?
In 1996, in October, I saw a deal, Muskogee Public Library, offering a certification course, instructional course in Laubach literacy changing. And by this time, Jim has been a district court judge. He's the presiding judge for about, 13, 13 years, something like that. So uh, the criminal justice system is something I am intimately aware of. And I had always taken stacks of books, magazines and things, to the Oklahoma County Jail, carefully marking out my name and address. But the plight of the incarcerated, death penalty issues, things like that have been lifelong concerns, though I have never been actively involved in any of those issues up until that point. I purposefully took the Laubach course because it was my intention to get a foot in the door at Eddie Warrior Correctional Center in Taft, which is Muskogee County. It was about 20 minutes from my home. And I used my Laubach training and certification to get in the door out there. And in fact, was a literacy tutor for some time. I worked for, oh goodness, that whole fall and through the winter uh, as a tutor and came to know the women. It was a great learning experience for me. I'd never been to a prison before of any sort, and didn't. You always hear about the needs, but I needed to go and see and learn what and decide, really what sorts of things can, seriously, really impact these women. Literacy, of course, is huge. And Eddie Warrior had a very strong principal at that time. I have to give great credit to Dr. H. Clint Davis, who now lives in the Dallas area. He had a very strong GED program. This is the high school equivalency program. But there was not really a college program to speak of. And youthful offender monies were, this is kind of contract with America days when many social programs are languishing. So there were very few women in class, and they were mainly in correspondence, now called distance learning classes. I believe hands-on teachers modeling behavior, there to answer questions. I think that's 1,000 times better than distance learning. However, if all you can do is distance, I'm for the education. I began with Dr. Davis to do some programs in the community to kind of put a face on incarcerated women. And I typically would begin, my name is Jane Doe, 403-293. I'm one of 1,700 women incarcerated. Tell about the crimes. Mainly it's drugs, surprise, surprise. Tell about my situation with my education. Well, the upshot is Clint and I are doing these programs, and we went to the Lake Tenkiller Ladies Association, and this must have been April of '97. A lady there from Florida visiting family in Oklahoma came up to me after the program and said, Nugget was my friend. Nugget was Jim's uncle, J. Howard Edmondson, who was the governor of Oklahoma. The fact that she's used the family nickname has me know that she was, in fact, a very close friend of Howard's. She gave me $50 and wanted it for the higher education of an anti-warrior woman. Well, we had no way to cash the check. And of course, I take my problems home. I still do. And Jim told me, what you need is an eleemosynary trust. And I crossed my eyes and felt it was. Anyway, I set about getting myself an eleemosynary trust. And so many lawyers to thank for their pro bono work. In May of that year, just a month later, incorporated Friends of Anti-Warrior Foundation. And I could cash that check. And then comes the deal about what about the next check? And fundraising has been my middle name, really, since that time. Jim and I, well, the family is political. We're well known. A woman, I got some publicity about my work at Anti-Warrior, and a woman, a friend of mine, really kind of through Friends of the Library years, saw me in the post office and said, come and see me. I'm doing foundation allocations. I'm assuming you're a 501c3, which of course is an IRS designation. Well, in fact, I had applied and it was pending. That's a very involved process, some of these things. And I was really a fish out of water. I relying on the kindness really of familiars and not so much strangers. 501c3 came through, and this friend, my philanthropist, has sustained us ever since. In the early years, I did probably 2 or 3 programs a month. And when the civic groups, ladies at the church, that sort of thing, and when they would allocate their funds, which might be
6 months later, I would usually get $500. And to me, that represented 3 scholarships at that time. I partner with Connor State College of Warner, which is a junior college, and they have always taken such wonderful care of me. They've waived certain fees. They actually send certified teachers to the prison. These are not distance learning experiences, and it's just been wonderfully successful. My hero is Dr. Donnie Nero of CSC. He's the president, and I understand that he is retiring, and I hope he tells his incoming president what a good deal Few Foundation is, so, and that I keep my good program going.
Did you have expectations when you first went into the system?
I really was kind of shaking in my boots because of my family situation. DOC was the Department of Corrections was very wary of me. I had all the earmarks of being a potential troublemaker, and in subtle ways, I was kind of discouraged from nothing overt. They didn't want to mess with me too much. Here's Jim, who can call a grand jury just on a signature, and one of the things grand juries do is investigate the local prisons and the local jails. That's a task, no matter what the subject of the grand jury. At least that's the way it used to be. I'm thinking it probably still is. So it was not overt, but my stuff was so new. The idea of a foundation. In fact, I know of no other such foundation in this country. And for years, I was a member of the Oklahoma International Correctional Educators Associations. I gave programs about Friends of Eddie Warrior Foundation in Dallas and in Portland, Oregon. And with my contacts kind of out there on especially the national scale, I don't know of anything else like this. I'm hoping there are many, but to my knowledge, my program is somewhat unique, which scared DOC. Untried, unproven. What are we messing with here? And over time, I have proven myself a very good friend of Eddie Warrior. And my warden a few years ago, Eddie Warrior Correctional Center warden, and I'm living over here in Oklahoma City. I don't even go there weekly the way I did for many years. Put me up for Correctional Volunteer of the Year. Well, there are 20,000 volunteers out there, mainly Christian ministry sorts of things. And, I was Volunteer of the Year. So I have a very, very good relationship with the Department of Corrections. I'm a graduate of their leadership class. I did that about a year ago. And we were fortunate that a new governor came to town with a more in line. At the time I started, and DOC is a department of the executive. So what the executive is up to is the theme for that department. And unfortunately, the governor at the time called families of of inmates scumbags, and well, teachers were slobs. I mean, he was kind of notorious for being politically incorrect and offensive to boot. A new governor came to town. DOC began looking at alternatives to lock the door and let no light shine upon those people that have done wrong. Tough on crimes, how much have we heard about that? Well, now we're looking at being smart on crime. Hang up, incarcerate the people that are truly dangerous to us, and not the people we're mad at who need drug beds. Well, I can't provide drug beds, but I can provide a college education for some of the women at Eddie Warrior Correctional Center. And I'm very happy to do so.
In the early days when, up through the time you were going constantly over there, would you have a lot of one-on-one interaction with the inmates?
Oh, yes. I had all kinds of programs. I was trying to improve their lives on many levels. For the first few years, I had very little money to educate. So I had an Oprah's book club. I would buy used books. I used to go to Portland, Oregon quite a lot, and there's a wonderful bookstore there named Powell's. I would clear their Oprah books out I brought an empty suitcase always they were reading, and I was such a snob, and I'm apologetic about it now. They were reading Sweetheart of Ridgeway High books, and I just kind of turned up my nose at them and wanted them to read more quality work. Now I feel, especially the very young people, that whatever they read is good. Discernment and discrimination comes with experience. So, we had Oprah's book club. My claim to fame, far more than Friends of Eddie Warrior Foundation, is Tales for the Rising Moon, a program I started in January of '99 at Eddie Warrior. Inmate mothers and grandmothers would come to me and select books, children's books, for their kids at home. They would audio tape these books, a selection of these books. And People Magazine had worked with me a little by that time, and they gave me a Polaroid camera. So I'd take a picture of Mommy holding the books, and I'd send the whole kit and caboodle home to the kids. And this was at no cost to the inmate parent or grandparent. So it was just, as you can imagine, wildly successful. I am happy to say that, when Jim came to the Supreme Court, we moved to Oklahoma City, I took the program into Mabel Bassett. And though I am now no longer running the program, they still are running at Eddie Warrior and Mabel's, and they're wonderfully successful. And it's the heartbreak, incarcerated women have as their worst guilt those children at home. And, the lucky ones are with the maternal grandmother. Some are with Daddy. Daddy may be kind of a shady character too. I hope not, and often not. But DHS is involved, all manner of, and the kids are mad. Where's Mommy? I need Mommy. They plug into their little earphones when they come home from school and sit down with the book that Mommy had sent them and listened to her read it. So it was really a wonderful program, and I am delighted that it is still going on at both of those women's prisons. So I had a kind of a bunch of little things going on. I worked with a program called Play Day during Christmas break, spring break. Churches around the state would bring the children of Eddie Warrior women to the prison for a day. And it was playing all manner of games and McDonald's treats, more of a treat to Mommy, really, than the child who was probably getting a good share of McDonald's burgers. But the wonderful programs to address some of those very, very serious problems. Those kids are 5 times more likely than other young people to become involved in the juvenile justice system. And, you know, grandma's raising grandbabies. That's not fair, you know, but it's a loving relationship, and thank God for that. But grandma doesn't want to drive the 150 miles to Eddie Warrior with, you know, they're going to do that once or twice a year. Daddy is far more likely to bring the kids a couple times a month even. So various problems like that, many issues, way too few drug beds. Most people are there from crimes that result from drug use in one way or another. And I'm delighted that our new speaker-elect, Chris Steele, author of 2998, which passed last session, is a partnership between the state of Oklahoma and the Kaiser Foundation of Tulsa to do alternative sentencing for nonviolent offenders, mothers with children. It keeps the mother and child. I'm not sure exactly how it all is going to work here in Oklahoma County, but it starts in January here. It is far less disruptive and far more successfully addresses her needs, which are usually drug counseling, intervention, that sort of thing. And it's viewed a little bit as an intervention. Over time, I came to view a single college class from Friends of Eddie Warrior Foundation as an intervention. So profoundly is that woman's life view changed. When she successfully competes and completes a 3-hour class, she's just, my goodness, I'm doing the same things those college kids are doing, and I'm succeeding. And not only that, I did well. What kind of change does that make? My work is more fun for me than anybody out there. I can tell you that for sure.
And I bet really rewarding.
Very rewarding. Every once in a while I get sick of fundraising, and I do too much of that. I just turned 65, and I'm not sure how long I'm going to keep this up. But one of my very, very early students is an attorney practicing law here in Oklahoma City. And every once in a while I'll meet Mary Ann for lunch, just so I know that my work is so much of it, I never see the outcome.
Well, I want you to tell me about Mary Ann.
Well, Mary Ann is Hispanic. She, as a very young Texas woman, was driving through Oklahoma with a carload of marijuana on her way, I think, to Chicago or someplace like that. Her father has gotten her involved in this somehow. Anyway, she's traveling with her little brother, and they are stopped in Veneta, Oklahoma. And in the marijuana is some heroin. Well, Marianne gets a very, very long sentence for trafficking. She is a gifted linguist. She's bilingual. She has English is her second language, and she is highly proficient in that. Anyway, I helped her. I had created, in order really kind of to get my family to contribute to the foundation, an Ed Edmondson Memorial Award. This is named for my father-in-law. My mother-in-law was always very happy to fund that. Well, Marianne won an Ed Edmondson Memorial Scholarship early on, and due to the fact that she got her Associate of Arts degree at Eddie Warrior. That's as high as we go. Connors is a junior college. When parole time came, they're very impressed. The parole boards, well, this girl, So and she was extremely young when the crime occurred. I forget how many years she served, but she was released. She returned to her native Texas and got her bachelor's. She still had some kind of parole obligation to Oklahoma. So Jim and I helped her return to Veneta, to Claremore, I guess. I forget the county seat. But she got post-conviction relief, which is a formal open court hearing, and no objection from the district attorney, who kind of looked at her as, you go, girl, And thank God he was a human being, because others, are not, they're not just in that big six-shooter. Upshot, Marianne's done with any obligations to the Oklahoma Department of Corrections or the parole board or anything like that. This is wonderful. Well, she wants to apply to law school and has wonderful LSAT grades, which is the test you take to see if you qualify for law school. And she applied at OCU, right here in Oklahoma City University. And to their credit, it's a private school. It's run by the Methodist, it's affiliated with the Methodist Church. They said, Marianne, we'd love to admit you, but we'd charge you all this money, you'd have all these loans, and at the end, we are afraid that you will not be able to practice law, because the Oklahoma Bar Association has a no felon rule. Well, I got on my hands and knees, and so did Jim Edmonds and other people that I know. Many, many people helped Marianne along the way. She was admitted. We said, we'll face that when the time comes. And the time came. She graduated and did very well. Jim and I, who by now is, I don't know, is he Chief Justice? Anyway, he's a justice on the Supreme Court. I, Suzanne, the Friends of Eddie Warrior woman, we testified before the board, Oklahoma Board of Bar Examiners. They are on a case-by-case basis looking at these problem graduations, and wonderful. Dr. Davis came up. My old principal came up from Texas. So many people that cared about her testified, and she was ultimately given a full license. She's a fully accredited attorney at law. Well, now our next thing is she can practice law and do all these wonderful things, but she can't vote. So we went to, many letters went to Governor Henry regarding Marianne, and she was granted a full pardon. So she's out there voting and having lunch with me now and again to, pep me up. She's a beautiful young woman. Her practice is Hispanic. She does criminal work and civil work, and she's making a big difference in a lot of lives herself, and I'm very, very proud of her.
It's great how now she could give back too.
Oh, absolutely, and that is her. So many of the women that I've met in prison who are soon to go out, their plans, they want to do social work kind of stuff. And I consider myself a social worker without portfolio. And it always is to help women, to intervene, to stop before it goes to this point of incarceration. That dovetails so nicely with the attention being paid right now to Oklahoma's incarcerated women. We, based on population, we incarcerate more women than any other state in the Union. And the United States is notorious worldwide for being a high incarcerator. I suspect we're the highest in the world. Well, good things are happening a lot. We can't afford this stuff that we're doing, and we're not providing drug care, drug counseling. These people are addicts. They need help, and education has its role. That can change right there. And of course, my women are sober. It's an enforced you haven't dealt with the addiction, but you're not using at this moment. You're going to college. Religion is a contributing factor to many women, quote unquote, find the Lord in prison, and it's very understandable because it's a gospel of forgiveness and a gospel of hope. So if we, the little three-legged school, education, religion, and address those addictions. Sometimes AANA is enough, and I'm very hopeful with this Kaiser Foundation State of Oklahoma partnership will deal with that first thing. That's going to be the focus. Get this person well. Have this person be a taxpayer and not a tax drain, because we can't afford her.
So let me get this straight. There's no drug or alcohol counseling in the jails?
There's very little. That never was my area of expertise, but so few beds for people that know about such things. It's not uncommon for a serious drug treatment program to be many months, and I don't really understand all about that, but they're the experts, and I believe them. So,
well, you mentioned briefly earlier about working at the Oklahoma County Jail. Could you tell me a little bit about what you're doing there?
Yes. Well, just kind of serendipity when Jim and when Jim was appointed to the Supreme Court. it, it was on the front page of the Sunday Oklahoman, and a lot of it was about my prison work because over the years I have gotten some publicity that has been very good because it's helped other places start these programs, and I'm delighted when they get going. Especially Tales has been very popular, and it's kind of here and there. Someone read that, a woman that used to volunteer at Mabel Bassett, a friend of mine. She's an attorney. We met for lunch. Look, I was looking, what's next? I can't go to Eddie Warrior anymore. What now? I always intended to continue the foundation, but in terms of hands-on volunteer work, well, an Episcopal priest who is a friend of mine connected me with another woman who was kind of casting about looking for some meaningful volunteer work. And we three met, and we'd all read Wally Lamb's Couldn't Keep It to Myself. He's an author who was doing a writing program in a Connecticut women's prison. And he'd compiled a book of their writings, and they were extraordinary. And we thought, that's doable, cheap. It's a paper and a pen and a prompt. And always a little bit difficult is a new program. The people that work with, that run the show, the sheriffs, the wardens, are a little, they're not so keen on new programs. However, my dear friend, Oklahoma County Court Clerk, Patricia Presley, we three met with Patty and how to take this, how to present this to the sheriff and take a writing program into Oklahoma County Jail. He was wonderful, opened the doors for us. We just, this fall, had our 3rd anniversary. I will go there the day after tomorrow, every Wednesday from 2 o'clock till 4:30. We're there. We've had gifted students. Our main, the wonderful thing about Writing Through Walls is that our women kind of over time, it's not designed as therapy, but there are therapeutic aspects to writing things out. It's contributing to the tranquility of the county jail. People upset, usually about their kids, something going on at home that they cannot do anything about. They'll go write that out instead of punching somebody or, who knows, throwing food, whatever one would do. And our sheriff is very supportive of our program, and we'd love to see it expand. It's facilitators, prompts, pencil, and paper.
And what do you do with the stories?
Well, we have several prompts. We only write for 15 minutes, which is, well, that's about as long as our attention span goes. Each woman is allowed to select one writing for us to take home. We three divide the writings. We edit, type up, and comment, only positive comments. So there's no constructive criticism even. We'll correct the spellings and whatnot. And when they quickly write, we're not at our best in terms of punctuation and spelling. So, and we just don't even worry about that. After the woman has been with us for 8 weeks, she gets a certificate that declares that she is a writer. Writer's right. She is also given a chapbook, which is a compilation of all the writings that we three have taken home. It's put on beautiful paper and it's bound with a ribbon. And from that point on, every writing that woman turns in to us is put on pretty paper and hole punched and added to. They're very, very proud of their chapbooks. Oklahoma County Bench and many of the lawyers down there is aware of our programs. So women going from the jail to sentencing want their judges to see the chapbook, and I've been using my time well, Your Honor. And we have a good bit of support downtown, and that pleases us very much. We three feel very much that we are learning far more than our women are, and that's usually the way those things go. They don't know about meter and that sort of thing, let alone iambic pentameter or anything like that. They're natural poets, and the rhythm of their work. And we often don't change even grammatically incorrect things if the woman's voice is coming through very clearly. And so it's as editors, it's very interesting to us, and we enjoy our work very much.
I bet some of those stories are quite.
They're wonderful, and we all puddle up at times. My husband calls us, we three facilitators, the wailing muses. The weeping muses, whatnot, because we too go deep sometimes, Christmas memories and those sorts of things, and we're very sensitive. It's such a lovely group. The jail is highly transient. We have new people coming in, at least monthly, and we become very supportive of each other, and it's 2.5 hours a week out of your cell, with other people and nice ladies. So it's a very good thing.
Well, could you've had this great story, getting involved, meandering through.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me about any stumbling blocks or adversity you faced along the way?
Just at first at Eddie Warrior, really kind of my background. I had the potential. Drew had just been elected Attorney General too. Besides Jim being the district judge for the county. I kind of looked like I might be coming out to cause them trouble, and there were subtle things.
Were you ever afraid to use your name?
Well, yes. In fact, I went in as Suzanne Williams. My fear was that Jim had sentenced one of the women, and there would be anger with him. Though I have met, I fessed up after a while. I'm Suzanne Edmondson, and they knew the Edmondson name, of course. And I met people that Jim had sentenced. He's such a humane man that they liked him, and sometimes he'd given more than one chance to someone, and I really messed up. I kept doing it. I didn't listen to him, and He sent me here. And I will go home and never disobey the court again type stuff. But I don't know what I was thinking. Hostage, why, just, well, you're scared when you go into a prison. You've never been there before. The women are all dressed alike. There's a guard at the gate when you come in. And I went in a few times with media and television, as well as the People magazine print people, and I'm sure they feared that people will want to come in and write about the fact that this woman is volunteering out here, and only favorable publicity. In fact, years before I really felt accepted by senior DOC, my warden, that sort of person, my program, Friends of Eddie Warrior, was being bragged about at these national, all the wardens getting together. Well, in Oklahoma, we have a private foundation that is educating. That's not fair. You're giving me all this grief. You don't want me here. And it just took time. It took time, and it needed somebody at the top who was not disrespecting everyone that had to do with the Department of Corrections, volunteers, inmates. I mean, we're all human beings. And the more I work with the incarcerated, the more convinced I am that we have far more in common than we have that separates us. These are our daughters, they're our mothers, our neighbors, our sisters. 97% of them rejoin society. How much better if they're educated, if their addiction issues have been addressed. Let's make a taxpayer out of that person, and let's reintegrate them, and consider that they paid their debt to society. So,
Well, tell me about some big highlights for you.
well, goodness,
There has to be many.
Well, yes. I still go to graduations when I can. Eddie Warrior has them twice a year, and sometimes some of my women are getting their Associate of Arts degree. And, well, this year I provided grants to 110 women who would not have gone. My women are always, the incarcerated, qualified, indigent women of Eddie Warrior Correctional Centers. So they can't go to college on their own. Youthful offender monies has increased federally. Well, the monies have not increased. Eligibility used to be youthful offender was someone up to age 25. They've moved that to 35, which of course incorporates more eligible people. They didn't increase the funding. So I'm kind of the biggest college presence at my prison. We have a few fortunate women who can self-pay. They have wherewithal on the outside, usually family. And there are some, the tribes have stepped up and are paying for their women. I did for a while, and we just kind of visited about that. How much better if your citizen comes home educated and ready to take her place as a law-abiding member of your community. So they've been very helpful. Different religions have, different churches have given me scholarships. Here in Oklahoma City, Mayflower Congregational Church has just been absolutely wonderful, as has the First Unitarian Church. So I'm an equal opportunity money gatherer. I was with the American Association of University Women, AAUW. Had a meeting on Saturday here with the ladies in Edmond, and they slipped me a few bucks. So if I have money today, somebody's in college tomorrow. I have always been hand to mouth. I have never been interested in having a big principal, and I only spend the interest. Well, I'm not in the position to accumulate a huge principal. Few Foundation has no employees and no overhead. So every cent that comes to Few Foundation goes to tuition or books. And I'm a lending library. I've spent $1,700 on 8 math books. But they'll be used this semester and next semester and so on until they're tattered or the volume changes, a new book is issued or something like that. So I'd far rather pay for tuition than books, as you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So graduation is always a big highlight. What are some
Yes.
others?
Well, I used to have wonderful fun when one of my women who'd read for me to her children, and I'd mailed home books, and I'd get to meet the kids on play day. And it was just always so darling. One little bitty was there with, was it Mama or Grandma? Generations are pretty close, women in prison. I once had a 26-year-old grandmother read to her grandbaby. So sometimes you don't know whether it's Mama or Grandma. Anyway, the little kid standing right there, she brought him over to meet me. This is the lady that sent you the books and took the picture of me. And he started reading, telling me the story verbatim. He knew that story so well. And it was the sort of thing that he would come home from kindergarten or whatever and plug in, listen to Mama, and read the book and have his little cookies and milk or whatever. But that was his routine, and that was, those stories are fun. Fun stories about girls that have released. I spread my money very, very thinly, since a single class can be such a life-altering experience. So usually my women have been with me for a very long time to get their associates, or they came into prison with some college hours. And just the knowing that, let me just go on with what I was saying. If I've got somebody close to discharge and close to AA, that woman can have 7 classes this semester. I want to have her leave fully with the AA in hand, and just kind of through hearsay sorts of things. I'm still close to some of the teachers over at Eddie Warrior. So-and-so got out. She went up to Missouri. She went to the journalism school at Missouri. It's very famous and a very good one. So, and we know that she's working as a reporter doing such and so. And that's always, because it's so, those things are rare when I really find out what happened next, because we we lose them into the wider world and hope that they continue and get their bachelor's. Or hopefully their associates is enough and finds them a fine job, helps them find a fine job that will feed their children and keep the wolf from the door. So always those are extraordinarily wonderful things. It was huge to get Volunteer of the Year. That took me totally by surprise. I had no idea my name had been submitted, and that was just very, very nice. A few times here in Oklahoma City, I've been at lunch, and a former student has waited on me, and I'm 7 years out of Eddie Warrior now. So the women that are students are not women that I know. I know their names because I, keep pretty careful records and do write the checks and things. And when I go to Eddie Warrior, it's great fun to put a face with that name. And Jim's been commencement speaker, and just they're lovely to us. I mean, last time I was there, I got a plaque from Eddie Warrior Correctional Center to our greatest friend, and I kind of have a little alcove in my office where it's beginning to fill up with these things. It's so strange because for so many years, I worked in the system with a sense of kind of anonymity, even though the press had been with me some. I mean, I continued after the press left, and I was there weekly and sometimes daily. And when 10 years out, the awards, the DAR folks, all of the lovely honors I've gotten, it was a shock. I expected that I would be even more anonymous in Oklahoma City, and actually the awards started here, and it's a very nice feeling.
Well, speaking about awards,
yes, Hall of Fame.
When you were notified that you were going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, what was going on in your mind?
I was astonished and humbled. I felt a bit like an imposter.
Why is that?
Oh, I don't know. It seems to me that I'm doing very reasonable things and not extraordinary things. And that is, I'm sure, somewhat because I've been doing it so long. And there is kind of that sense of anonymity that it has to do with me living here and my women are there. It's 2.5 hours away. I'm not really intimately involved in it anymore. And I fund it, and I write the checks, and I don't know the women and don't know their struggles, don't know their stories. And so it was a wonderful surprise, and I am one of the things I said when I had my opportunity to speak. Well, besides having the governor in the audience, we need more drug beds, Governor. Put my little plug in. I feel and felt that by honoring me, the worth of my women was acknowledged, and that makes me want to cry. There's a change afoot, and I'm part of it, and I'm so glad I was able to make a difference, and I'm surprised really that it was I who founded a foundation. I mean, that would never have occurred to me. And it's I say evolution, it's a series of events, and one thing leads to another, and all of a sudden you look around and here it is. I feel very grateful to women that I consider my mentors and my advocates in the community. And
Such as?
well, let me just up front, Justice Yvonne Cogger, a fellow, a sister, member of this august Women's Hall of Fame, has, well, since we moved to the city, she's been promoting me to go do this, go meet these people, and you need to talk to them. And she's always, I said, Yvonne, you're just so good to me. And you're doing the Lord's work. And I guess I am.
And she presented you.
Yes.
That year.
Yes, she did. She talked a whole lot about Drew and Jim. I was kind of... She's been close to so many members of my family, including Ed. Yvonne is so involved in Sovereignty Symposium. She's the reason there is a Sovereignty Symposium. Her very first one, my father-in-law was still alive, and he was the former congressman, but he helped her get some major funding out of Washington, D.C. So, we just have all of these, well, all roads lead to Justice Cogger's, I guess. I'm going to have dinner with her tonight. So,
Well, what does this type of honor mean to you?
Well, it is profoundly validating. I can go anywhere in the Oklahoma Department of Corrections and be respected. I no longer have to prove myself, and that's such a shortcut. It is just such a wonderful thing to be able to go into a place, bring a program, and not go through the hoops of I don't know, worry that staff may have about, is she going to incite anyone to riot? I mean, not that I'm saying that flippantly, of course, but
You're not there to cause trouble.
no, I'm not. I truly am a friend of Eddie Warrior, but it took me a long time. It was 3 wardens later when I really felt accepted at Eddie Warrior. And I'll say his name, Warden Eric Franklin. You were wonderful, and I was delighted to be welcomed and to welcome you to Eddie Warrior.
Well, how do you feel that now people look at you as a role model?
Well,
And this is on many levels.
well, I suppose. I don't know. You live long enough. I mean, gosh, I hope that I would be a model for someone confronted with a pretty good sized problem, and that person maybe would think, well, I took college into a kind of reluctant atmosphere. I don't want to use the word suspicion. Anyway, little by little, step by step, with as one is purposeful and careful. I have always tried to be very diplomatic. I don't pull rank on anybody. I am here as a woman who has this notion. And here's what I think about how I'm going to go about it. What do you think? And that, of course, moves mountains far more easily. I'll get a grand jury out here, by God, if you're mean to me. And, you know, I used to tease, well, Jim used to tease me when I was at first going to Eddie Warrior. Are you taking a bail bondsman today? I said, if I'm not home for dinner, come get me, you know. And well, we've had fun with that. I have had no serious problems. There were just little covert discouragements that, had I been less determined, I'd have run away. I really would have. So, keep your eye on the prize. Well, I didn't know what the prize was. You know, I didn't know it was going to be a foundation and all of that. But there are logical progressions and logical steps, and each one is challenging. I mean, for me to incorporate, what do I know about going to the Secretary of State and becoming a foundation? Well, now I can tell you, because I learned little by little by little. I was wonderfully assisted by members of the Oklahoma Bar Association, and they have my eternal thanks. Many women at Eddie Warrior have them to thank as well. So,
Well, what are your hopes for the foundation into the future?
well, I'm giving that some thought now. I have a wonderful board. My primary philanthropist, a wonderful lady, is 80-something. I am now 60-something. And I feel that I will keep Friends of Eddie Warrior going personally as long as it's easy. I don't really feel energetic enough to go to 3 or 4 meetings a month and give a program and maybe get $1,500. You know, that's substantial, and I very much appreciate the clubs and groups that have given me money. It's just such a hard way. It's an exhausting way, and I just kind of don't think that I have the energy for that anymore. I have recently met with people at Oklahoma City Community Foundation, which is an umbrella foundation for many. Donna Nye, Governor and Mrs. Knight, Donna has a foundation, and it is administered by Oklahoma City Community Foundation. It may be at some point that I, with the permission of my board of directors, all of this would go to the board and be discussed thoroughly. It would maybe go under the auspices of that fine organization. For the now, I'm feeling pretty perky, and my friend Marion, my philanthropist, is, Lord knows, a ball of fire. So I mean, she may be cruising the islands as we speak. She's a wonderful human being, and has been. She's the true friend of Eddie Warrior. She's made a difference in many, many lives. She likes my little group because there's no overhead. She gets more bang for the buck, and she does indeed.
Well, you've mentioned many people that have helped you through this process.
Yes.
Is there anybody else you'd like to make mention of at this time?
Let's see. Oh, gosh, yes. A retired lawyer helped me incorporate. His name is Kay Wilson, and Kay was very wonderful to me. He is the late Kay Wilson at this time, but I love that man. And he would occasionally show up for Eddie Warrior things if there was something kind of fun ceremonial going on. Jim Edmondson helped me more than anybody, of course, and it continues to be my main sustainer. John Morris Williams at the Oklahoma Bar Association. He's the executive director down there. I wrote a year ago, an article for the Oklahoma Bar Journal that comes out every week or every 2 weeks, and it was published, and I thank so many lawyers along my path. My lawyer to this day is Ron Wright, and Ron did everything pro bono. Tim Larison in this city, a high-dollar, wonderful attorney, did a lot of work for me for $28.10, the cost of copies. I have been the recipient of so many kindnesses like that, and they get gold stars in my book.
Well, if you could give advice to Oklahomans,
Yeah.
what would you tell them?
Oh, gosh. I would say, Oklahoma, the people we are incarcerating are our children and our neighbors. We're sending them away for far too long. We can't afford the system that we've built up. Building more prisons does not solve our problems. 97% of the people we incarcerate come home. And how much better if they're educated and reunited with their families and they're drug free and they can become taxpayers and live good lives. Jesus Christ asked, have you visited those in prison? As a God-fearing Christian state, the reddest of the red, I think we need to pay attention to his words and the way he lived. And let's be more charitable to the last and the least, because they can become the best and the strong and be our neighbors and the good citizens of our community. We have to address their drug problems and their lack of education. And I would love for you to help me in this work.
You've lived in Oklahoma for quite some time now.
Yes, since we moved here in, I guess, 74. Oklahoma City and Muskogee and back to Oklahoma City. Not everywhere in the state, but I feel very much an Oklahoman.
What does Oklahoma mean to you?
Oh, goodness. Well, there's when Jim and I were newlyweds and first living in Oklahoma, we'd probably been married 4 years or 5, and I was in a grocery store, and standing next to me was a little bitty black lady, and she was talking to the meat. I edged away from her, and then she was, oh, can you believe these prices? And then she turned those brown eyes to me. She was speaking to me. I'd never been spoken to in a grocery store before. Now I chit-chat in line all the time. I love that about Oklahoma. I love its friendliness and acceptance and its goodwill, its bonhomie. I love its weather, except when it's 115. I'm not too keen on the really hot end of that, but I have a misting fan, so I'm able to sit out in my garden. I love gardening, and I love the fact that the season is so long and that my flowers lasted until just a week ago. That's unheard of. I have my best friends here. I have made such good friends and feel very much an Oklahoman. I decided at some point that I could never catch up on all of the Edmondson family history. I no longer try. I know enough to get by. So I enjoy Jim's family very much. I think it is a distinguished family that I'm very proud to be a member of. I am grateful for my adult children and my 11-year-old grandson, Jackson. I'm grateful for Christmas and the goodwill of so many. During difficult times in my life, I have felt very sustained by the many who held me up. I'm certain that they did. And I don't want to live anyplace else except I was just a week ago in Key West, and I want to move there. But not really. Maybe just part of the year.
It's nice to visit.
Yes, exactly. I don't want to be there hurricane season. I'd rather face tornadoes.
Well, if you could give advice to those who want to follow in your footsteps and work in the ways you have worked, what would you tell them?
I would say that very many things can be done in the prisons for very little cost. The children's bedtime story program that I ran, donated books came to me by the bushel basket. I was giving a program one time to I think it was DAR ladies, and one of the ladies in the audience, her son was an author of children's books. Hundreds came to me. Once the word's out that you're looking for, you need X, it will appear. And churches supported me with the postage stamps. Help is there. There are so many good-hearted people, and especially with the program for the children, we all feel for those little kids that are doing without their mommies. And some daddies in prison too. Mom and dad were arrested together for manufacturing or whatever, that is a very good place to start, is working on the children's causes. My writing program is very, very simple and inexpensive, and it provides a wonderful release. A book could come out of this easily, out of your work. You and a couple of friends go into a prison and have a writing program, you'll love it. It'll take a somewhat different form than the one I have at the jail, but it will be truly satisfying and it will be helpful. It contributes to the tranquility, to the well-being of the people that are involved in that class. The side benefit, it contributes to your well-being. A long time ago, I discovered that to find myself, I had to give myself away. And there's nothing, I believe, more than that. Volunteering in a good program is an extraordinary gift to you and gift to the ones that you're there to serve.
Well, I have one more question, but
Yes.
is there anything else before I ask that question
No.
that you'd like to add that we haven't spoken about today?
No, that's pretty much it. What else did I have? Oh, I had so many little things, juggling little things at Eddie Warrior. No, I think that's pretty much it.
Well, when history is written about you,
Yes.
whether you think it's going to or not,
Yes.
what would you like for it to say?
Gosh. I would like it known, and this is kind of comes to me from my husband, that even though I was afraid, I kept after it, and my husband calls that courage, and I have come to believe that myself. And even when I didn't fully believe in myself that I could do such and so, if I took baby steps, I had a lighted path, and it was clear to me. But sometimes I was afraid to move, so I stood in place until that step became familiar to me. And that familiarity, it gave me a chance to think, too, time to reflect on what I'm up to. And then I find myself able to move down the path a little bit. It took me quite a long time to really come from that first $50 that woman gave to me to my average, the average number of women I give grants to each semester is 56. Now that didn't happen just overnight. And there were lots of little steps along the way. There was lots of fundraising efforts. I went to meetings I didn't want to, and gave programs that were, got to be a little boring to me because it was the same old, same old. Hang in there, keep going, keep trying, and whatever you accomplish will be something that wasn't there before, or something that is better than anything that was there before. Build on someone else's work. Come to Eddie Warrior and make my work even more wonderful. Educate every woman out there. And then go across the street to Just Done, the men's prison. I was always a little afraid to go into the men's prison, so I've always focused on the women. But you're braver than I am. Go to Just Done and get that college program going. Bring Tales for the Rising Men, the bedtime story to them. They have children at home too. And how lovely it would be for those little kids to receive a package from Daddy, a bunch of pretty books, and an audio tape of him reading to you. So go for it.
Suzanne, thank you so much
You're welcome.
for your time today. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I've enjoyed it.